We now have a quorum, and we're going to get started here, and we're going to start with a roll call. And our wonderful mayor, a little bit under the weather, so he will not be with us today. So we'll start roll with Rick.
Here.
Rob?
Here.
Indra?
Here.
Eric?
Here.
Seth?
Here.
And myself here. And to start our workshop today, we are going to have a presentation from Dan Buck. So if you would like to come up. Thank you, from Destination Marketing Organization.
Yeah, hi everyone. Hello,
Thank
council, and all of you wonderful people. You're a very intimidating bunch as I stand right here, so forgive me. My name's Dan. I represent the local DMO, Visit Grants Pass. And I'm just going to run through a bunch of slides. I've asked some friends to join me today and help fill in some gaps. Otherwise, I'm going to jump right in unless you have initial questions. We're good to go? Enjoy your lunch. All right. So who we are, this is the agenda. We'll be talking a little bit about who we are, who is involved with Visit Grants Pass. I'm going to talk a little bit about the TLT. You're going to hear a lot about that in case you're unfamiliar. We'll have the 2023 look back and a STARS report that will go over some numbers. 23-24 update and also a marketing plan. Please jump in at any time with your questions. I enjoy that. So. Who we are a board of a bunch of people representing various pieces of the community, hoteliers, small business owners, concerned citizens, and the like, and we try to have a pretty good slice in there. You can see those names, and they represent a wide swath of interests. What we do. This is probably the most important part. After this slide, it just gets more and more boring, but the important part of what we do is right here. We work for the community to message, market Grants Pass, all it has to offer throughout the country, throughout the world in some ways. Economic development. This is probably the closest thing that's nearest and dearest to my heart, is being able to provide economic vitality downtown, uptown, across the river, and throughout the county. And that's probably the most important thing we do. Number two, stabilize the visitor industry. As you probably know, if you have a business here, you've been in this town for any length of time, you know that we struggle in the shoulder season, the off season between December and April. And it's a shame because every year we lose great businesses downtown and elsewhere because despite how great they are or were, they just couldn't get over the hump from December to April. So we're working on that. Managing visitor expectations. It's important that what we say, what we market, our messages out there in the world, they're actually true and accurate about the experience that they're going to have in Grants Pass. Protect local livability. I'm a longtime resident of Grants Pass, been here for several decades, and this part is very important to me. I don't believe that our job at the DMO is to bring as many people as possible to Grants Pass. I don't think that's helpful. I don't think that most citizens actually want that. What we're after are the right people. I'd like to bring the right people to this town that share our values, that share our goals, and that people who live here for a long time really enjoy having in town. And then finally, develop the destination and visitor experiences, and this is just a product of marketing. TLT, we're going to spend a little time right here. State TLT, 1.5% tax on stays less than 30 days within the city limits. It gets a little complicated from here, so please jump in with questions if you have them, because this is what it looks like today. Back in 2003, I believe, the state locked in whatever a municipality was doing for their lodging taxes, TLT, transient lodging taxes. And you can see that 7% is split 30-70, and it was locked in at that time. And then subsequently, we added a 2%, and then another 3%. So there's a total of 12% TLT tax on overnight stays within the city limits. And you can see how that's broken down there. 2% Do you have any questions about this particular bit? No? All right. Economic impact. So this is what we're really trying to drive with our efforts, with the marketing that we do, the messaging that we do. Economic impact, you can see that these are 2023 numbers. We won't have the 2024 numbers until later this month, so we'll have to use this as a proxy to understand how this works. In 2023, the share of overnight spending, visitor spending in Josephine County was $172 million and employing over 2,000 people. And I assume that those numbers are going to go up this year when we get those numbers. And I'll be sure to provide those to the council when we get them. Some interesting things of note here. On the far right column, you'll see that arts, entertainment, recreation, food service, all of these things are up, up, up. Despite what you may have heard or you've seen, and as I'm sure you all know, we can slice and dice numbers in any number of ways to get to a favorable outcome. But in this instance, everything is moving in the right direction for Grants Pass, and we'll have some more support documents for that as well as we move along. We have an STRS report that helps us understand how lodging is being used month over month and year over year. It's kind of the gold standard for these sorts of reports. This might be hard for you to see on the screen, but if you look across the bottom, you'll see Southern Oregon represented there against the rest of the state and the rest of the nation. And again, while you may have heard that things are not going in the right direction for tourism, Southern Oregon actually fares rather well when compared to the states nationwide, and then even within our own state and some other metro areas. Occupancy, room rates, revenue per available room demand, we're up all the way across the board, or at least flat where others are down. So that seems positive to me. That's just the current month, by the way, that's just March. Lodging taxes, you can see how these statistics lay out. And again, this is a little bit anomalous, and you have to dig a little deeper here. If you look at this year, this range of years, 2020 to 2024, these have been some of the most economically challenging times for every industry. And you can see that in 2020, the year of COVID, things were down substantially from what we can assume was the average. And then everybody got stimulus checks, and they got a bunch of money, and they had a lot of time off. And so you can see we got a substantial bump in the subsequent years. COVID was good to Grants Pass in a lot of ways, as people had extra resources and extra time on their hands, and they wanted something that was not going to break the bank, and you'll see that later. That's an important feature of what Grants Pass has to offer the average tourist. And so now as we get down into 2024, if you bottom right-hand corner, you can see we're starting to stabilize and get something back to normal. This is the rolling or running 12-month report of the same slide previously. And you can see that again, relative to the other areas in the state, Grants Pass fares rather well. And for 2024, we have some accomplishments that we're pretty proud of. I've only been doing this since December, so I'm still pretty new to the role. But I'm happy to say that one of the things that's been very important for me as we move forward is building relationships with other organizations in the town and in the county, and making sure that we're all working together, that we're aligned with our messaging, we're aligned with our goals, and that we're benefiting both the downtown area across the entirety of the city and the county. One of those big things that happened was the final formal launch of Main Street Grants Pass. Last year, Tori, my predecessor, she wrote the grant, got $50,000 in funding, and this year we're finally able to launch that, and many people in this room are involved in this endeavor, and it's really cool if you haven't been involved. Print publications, just part of the job. What I would like to point out is that $2.1 million in PR value. This is earned revenue. This is not paid placement, and that's a huge economic impact. It's effectively what we would have paid if we wanted to buy those spots in print. The 50 Things to Do flyer, you probably have all seen this. It is one of our most popular print publications. We work with COPA. And then we did just launch recently a Grants Pass branding unification project. Again, several people in this room are involved in that project. And it's really about taking the large messengers of Grants Pass, people that are reaching internally in the community, also beyond these walls, and working together to make sure that we're saying the same thing in the same way to amplify our efforts and really identify that Grants Pass persona. So I'm excited about that one. Marketing. This is where I'm going to call on my friends Dustin and Christian to run through some marketing campaigns that we're working on.
Thank you, Dan, and thank you, members of the council, for making time for us today. I'm Dustin Fletcher, account manager at DVA Advertising and PR in Bend, Oregon.
And I'm Christian Folk, digital director and partner at DVA. And again, we're out of Bend, Oregon.
We've been working with Visit Grants Pass for 3 years now. Tori brought us on, and we've had a lot of fun figuring out the town, what makes it click and what makes it unique. Destination marketing isn't unique to DVA. We work with areas around the West, from Sedona to Whitefish, Montana to Hood River. And we're clearly located in a town that has a lot of compression and marketing around the tourism industry. So what we like to do with a town like Grants Pass is figure out what is that advantage that we can highlight. How do we tell that story that's not just, it's the next stop down the road on your way north or south, but it's a place that you want to come and spend some dollars. We do that through a host of options that have been laid out here. You know, whether it's always on search advertising, so when people are looking for places to do, things to do in Grants Pass, we're making sure that we're not missing an opportunity there. We have a digital ad program, primarily through the Meta channels. So we're telling those stories that are engaging clients where they're at when they're ready to look for a place to stay. We do lots of SEO work as well. Traditional advertising like print, and then we also maintain our alliances with those outlets like the airport and publications that help bring us here too. So we want to make sure that those legacy partnerships are always recognized. You can see down here the call to action is book now. So what that means is that we're meeting people where they're at in our top of funnel advertising. And when they've expressed interest, they've engaged with an ad, they've visited the site, then we start getting them with more aggressive messaging. And that means that we're retargeting them and we want them to convert. And so what we do is we put them deeper into the site with an option to showcase all of the great lodging properties here in Grants Pass, whether they're hotels or Airbnbs, with the idea that someone comes to stay, they're going to spend money all throughout the town. So it just gives them a greater opportunity to convert and come visit us. We do this through, fun advertising. This is the fun part of the job. We work with awesome local partners. We have a talented guy in Griffin Storm here, marketing manager at Grants Pass. I see Seth over here, does great work in the video department. And then Kate Battles, she manages the organic social, and she's fantastic. And all these guys do a really good job providing us with assets to help tell these authentic Grants Pass stories. And so things that we highlight, we know that this is a wine region that's not to be missed. For those aficionados, it's a spot that you've got to come check out. So things like that, we know that those travelers are keen to spend money and like a finer experience. We want to talk to them. At the same time, we want to talk about how approachable this place is, because like other wine regions, it feels like you can walk into a more pretentious setting. But I think that the welcoming nature of this community makes it a real ideal location for folks to come visit. Beyond that, we've looked at other areas where perhaps outdoor adventure is going to be the linchpin for somebody to come visit. And with the amount of resources that have been applied to the infrastructure and mountain biking and trails and outdoor rec here, it's become very clear to us that this is another destination that's going to be one to reckon with. And I think we've taken opportunities to highlight that, whether it's the new trails that are over at Dollar Mountain or step that's already been established. We bring in travel writers and other folks that have influence in certain industries. I know Christian was responsible for bringing some niche vertical channels in, through enthusiast publications to come here and talk about why this is a great destination. And so when it comes to marketing Grants Pass, we're looking at more than just print ads, looking at more than just digital ads. We're looking at bringing in those voices that people already hold in high esteem, and they're helping communicate that message as to why this is worth consideration and why you should come spend some time here. We also do public relations work at DVA. Ashley Huckabee, who's our public relations account manager for Grants Pass, couldn't be here today. But what we do for PR for Grants Pass, a lot of this is around FAM, the familiarization tours that we build. So we'll pull together groups of travel writers and other folks of influence that can be in conjunction with an RDMO like Travel Southern Oregon, or a state like Travel Oregon, or it can be done through Visit Grants Pass independently. But what we want to do is make sure that we're able to package an ideal Grants Pass scenario for folks to experience what this place is from start to finish. And so we do a lot of the itinerary building. We also reach out to other outlets for press trips and see, how much interest can we build? Can we make a compelling narrative enough so that we can entice somebody to come here if they're not on a FAM trip? And we also do PR work based on communications. Like, do we need help getting a message in line, despite what's going on economically? How do we pivot? How do we shift when we need to, if that's a scenario that is something that should be considered? We have pretty considerable experience in this department. DDA has been in business for nearly 35 years, working with DMOs, working with local stakeholders, and making sure that we're able to answer those questions that you have, that the board members have, and that people need to know. So the experience is helpful, and PR is a big component in that. So notable features here, this is earned media placements or placements that we've helped arrange. Clearly there's some national and international publications, as well as our favorites like the Oregonian. So we work really hard to make sure that the Grants Pass name is out there and presented in a favorable, attractive light for guests to come visit. Here's some examples of the organic channel that Kate runs. We run paid at DVA, and then the organic channel is managed through Kate, and it really helps identify and anchor the stories that are important in the moment for Grants Pass. So she does a fantastic job. Basically, we go out there and we set kind of the hook, per se, and then when they come back and they want to engage with the channel, with Grants Pass, whether it's Facebook or Instagram, they're seeing the posts that are relevant to what's happening today. They can engage and have a dialogue and discussion with Kate and with whoever's manning the channel. So it's been a great opportunity for brand building and making sure that the ads that we're putting out are consistent with the message that we're communicating from our brand voice too. Just some more examples of social stats and engagement. We at DVA worked on a campaign a few years back, and we've been running it for a bit, and it's all predicated on this "have you ever" and giving ourselves and the would-be visitors of Grants Pass kind of a conditional positioning statement like, have you ever seen this? Have you ever done that? And I think that there's lots of legs in this campaign as well as we go forward, because there's so many different experiences that you can have in Grants Pass beyond the things that we know are clear reasons to come visit the area. So we've had fun working with local businesses, working with activities and other resources. I think that the Porch Fest and the Chalk Art Festival and other things like that are these unique tentpole events are just a fantastic opportunity to connect with folks in the Upper Valley, Willamette Valley, and also the San Francisco Bay Area, one of our targeting areas, to come here and check out, because it really feels unique. I don't know a town that does things quite like this, and I think that's one of those awesome, those are both events that you can hang your hats on. As far as the website goes, we've been able to work with Daggerheart Labs, who's a great WordPress developer, which is what the Visit Grants Pass site is built on. They also work really well with Otis. So we're making sure that all of our Oregon tourism business integrations are always pulling through to the site. All the events are updated. I know Griffin does a great job managing it too. So we want to make sure that the Grants Pass site is always update, relevant, and this is where we're hosting all of our content too. So that's the other part that I didn't reference earlier, but you know, at DVA and Grants Pass, we're really content forward in how we're going to market. We want to make sure that we're telling a story that's compelling, not just a reason to buy right away. So we might like to make sure that there's, you know, a high quality user experience when they visit the site. When guests land there, you know, they spend a few minutes reading the articles that we've drafted. Perhaps we've compelled them enough to read some more, or ideally we've converted them, you know, into a visitor and they're going to go and look at properties to rent or to book. We also do quite a bit of SEO and search work, and this is primarily done through the Dagger Heart and directly with Grants Pass. Google search has been part of the DVA component for a while. Recently it's been absorbed by Grants Pass, and I know these guys are doing a great job managing it at this point. As far as the attribution goes, Christian here is a Datafy whiz, and I know I've talked a little bit too long, so if you want to hop in there.
Yeah, so one of the things we just want to double down on that Dan mentioned at the top is the economic development piece. A lot of what we do in the tourism space is try to show the value of tourism. We have data partners that allow us to see when we serve advertising, what is the result? Do they show up in the destination? What hotels do they stay at? What places do they go when they visit? Our partnership with Datafy allows us to learn more about the tourists that come to town, where they're from, and how long they stay, and again, where do they go, and what hotels do they visit. So you can kind of see here some of the measurements, total trips and visitor days and average length of stay. These are all things that are built off of your mobile advertising ID, everyone's computer in their pocket. This allows us, again, to directly attribute our marketing efforts into real value. Tourism marketing was defined by impressions. So great, you served an ad, how many people saw it? That was the old way of looking at tourism marketing. The new way of looking at tourism marketing is what kind of real world value did we generate? And again, looking at tourism as an economic driver, you can see here, we know generally what people spend when they come to a place like Grants Pass. We have the metrics for that, and we know through the Smith Travel Research what the average hotel stay is during a particular period of time. So given we know how many people stayed, 20,000, almost 21,000 people room nights, we know what that value is and can really derive true value for tourism marketing.
Thank you, guys. So here's a quick look, high level, at our budget, the 23-24 fiscal year, and you can see how that is all allocated. Outside of administrative costs, everything is about marketing. This may be just interesting data for you if you didn't know. The number one demo in terms of income and age groups are the under 50,000 earners and the 45 to 64 age groups. And we would like to work on this a little bit. It does give us a little insight into the kind of person that is looking for a vacation or some time away in Grants Pass. Some just broad, interesting statistics. We partner with AirDNA as well. They help us understand some aggregated numbers for the tourism industry here in Grants Pass, and you can see that $7.6 million within the city limits is from visitor spending at private rentals, which I thought was interesting. $40.68 million in estimated campaign economic impact of an investment of $39,000. You're going to see one more number here. And this is one way that we enjoy looking at these numbers. For every $1 that we invested in marketing, we essentially generated $1,200 in return on those ads for a total of over 91,000 booked nights. Excuse me. Into this next fiscal year, you can see again we're working to drive down that administrative cost focus more of our resources on marketing, messaging, and developing relationships. Down at the bottom, other cash assets, that's our 1 quarter's worth of operating costs that we set aside for emergencies and crisis. The TLT revenues year over year, this is a little bit of a challenging one because we look at calendar years versus fiscal years. And so the TLT revenues over the calendar year, you can see that those incrementally have gone down since 2021. And you can see that the budget has gone down in the fiscal year even more than that since 2022. A quick Google search, some cursory research, and thanks you to ChatGPT, you can see that the top economic drivers in Grants Pass, 1, healthcare, 2, retail, trade, and tourism. These are from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and it's important, I think, for the entire community to understand how tourism drives economic value throughout the county. We're going to continue focusing on public relations. This is an important way to get cumulative effect so that we're not constantly buying ads all the time, but rather we're bringing influencers, writers, other folks that have great presence in the media to come and enjoy our town and what it has to offer. So we'll be focusing on that a lot of sponsored content. And again, you'll notice these last few bullet points, it's all about the off season. It's about trying to figure out how to help our businesses, our community that's so retail and tourism dependent on surviving through those seasons. And one last note on the partnerships. Here's a few that we've been cultivating, working on over the course of the last few months. And perhaps some of you have sat in some presentations to talk about the four-legged table of these organizations working together. Visit Grants Pass, Main Street, the Chamber, and the city. And it's been really fun to watch these organizations come together and work together on a unified goal. And that is that. May I take questions?
Rick?
Thank you for your presentation. I thought it was very informative. Do you ever use the AAA book VIA for ads at times?
We sure do. In fact, if you open up the new one, you'll see an ad in there.
Good. And then how do we judge our town compared to other towns? You said you're using this special service, but do you have the factors or the values from the other towns to look at how we're doing?
I'm not sure I understand the question all of the way, but we do two things, and hopefully we touched on that a bit. One, we work together with the regional DMO. So the Southern Oregon region cooperates together to drive visitors to all of our areas. At the same time, we're kind of competing against each other for those same dollars. I hope that you saw in some of these slides some easy metrics. How big of an audience can we reach with a single post, both paid and organic? And you can see that we kind of lead the way for the region and in some ways the state for our ability to tap into organic followers who are interested in Grants Pass. For the rest of those numbers, I need to do more research and get those to you.
So if we're trying, if the region is down, let's say Medford's down 10%, are we down 10% also in Bend?
No, sir.
You're indicating that we're actually exceeding them?
Yes, and I can provide those numbers. I can make sure that you all receive them in your inboxes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Indra?
Hi, thanks.
Hi.
I'm very excited about the marketing things that are going on and the groups that are getting together.
Awesome.
So I want to share that first. We seem to be moving forward in a positive direction with that. I just have a couple questions. So there's no data previous to 2020, the COVID year. Can we have that data? I would like to know how we did in previous to COVID.
We can get
versus
back,
now.
I think, to 2013. Is that right, Griffin?
Just a few years before
Sure.
would be
Yeah, we
fine.
can get that too.
Okay, thank you. And then I'm kind of confused as to how Main Street and Visit Grants Pass are connected, because I think they're two separate entities, but then it says that you major accomplishment established Main Street. Can you speak to that?
Sure. We established it in the sense that Visit Grants Pass was the broker of the grant. Tori Middlestat wrote that grant, brought it to town, and then there's a whole litany of people involved in the establishment of that. The reason it's important to visit Grants Pass is because we have the task of marketing to our own community as well, to make sure that everyone is aware of what's happening internally and externally to the community. I've used this metaphor before, probably you've heard it. Main Street is a lot like the donut hole. Well, Visit Grants Pass is the donut. So what we're trying to do is work together to make sure that we're communicating internally so that our community understands the work that's happening and they can see how important the messaging and the marketing is to the viability of their own businesses and their community. And I think you've seen some of these effects on First Fridays, the last couple. That is strictly an effort of Main Street Grants Pass. And by extension, Visit Grants Pass can enjoy the new thriving downtown because I can market that. That's a draw. People will come for that. And so it's important that we have those things working together. Did I answer your question?
Okay. Yes, so you helped bring them here, but they're a separate entity
Correct.
on their own. Thank you. I have a couple more, if that's okay. So as far as the marketing and doing a program for all of Grants Pass, how would you choose what businesses would be highlighted, say, on there as far as pictures and that? Because one thing that would be really important to me is that all businesses are included and that how it was chosen would be in a fair way, and maybe that would change over time.
It's a delicate issue. We have to use a little bit of discernment. We have to understand what will actually attract people to town. And so we have to look at every opportunity and go, is this really a local marketing endeavor? Is this appropriate for Main Street to be marketing internally to support our businesses? Or is there some kind of additional driver that would compel a person from a drive market to come to town? So we do have that little bit of thinking that we have to do around that. But philosophically, I don't think that one business is more important than another in this town. And I don't know that, that we give the due that is earned by a lot of the peripheral businesses that operate at the ends of town. I think right now there's an undue focus on downtown because we just launched this Main Street effort, and so they're getting quite a bit of attention. But ultimately, that's not going to have the long-term impact that Visit Grants Pass needs to have. And we certainly would be not giving a correct impression of the town if we failed to talk about 80% of it.
Okay, and just one more. And of course, you need administrative costs. I'm not saying that it's high or low, but so that other on that circle chart, is that all administrative costs?
It is, but that goes back to 2022, I believe, or 23. And some of that is just the upstart costs. This program's only been in existence for a few years, and there were still some starting costs that I think are lumped in there, but that's a little bit before my time, so I can't speak directly to it.
Okay, and I just wondered, is that typical for admin costs for this kind of thing?
I couldn't say, but I will say that in that second chart, that budget chart, we have a very aggressive effort going on to drop those down and run as lean and mean as we possibly can and reserve those dollars for marketing and messaging.
Okay, thank you for what you're doing.
Any more questions? Rob?
Yeah, really quick. Great presentation. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Rob.
I imagine that the tourist dollars spent is estimated using credit card data. I'm just wondering if you know what percentage of people use cash when going out to eat and things like that.
Those estimates oftentimes are triangulated via, you get the cell service triangulation, and then you get those credit card swipes. And you get haunted daily with retargeting ads that you've bumped into online. What is a little bit harder, we can understand from the ADR and doing that math, what those spending estimates are. When it gets out into the community, into restaurants, it's a little bit harder to understand, but the rule of thumb, and I'm sure you've all heard it, the 80-20 rule of thumb, there's probably 80% of those dollars are probably coming from internal sources, from citizens, and that extra 20 is probably coming from outside the area.
I guess my question was, do you have a way of knowing or estimating what percentage of people are using cash?
No, not today. Not that I'm aware of.
Kathleen?
So it seems like in the past, the river pulled a lot of tourism here. Do you see that changing? Like, it's not so much about the river anymore, but it's about the shopping and the wineries and the new things that are being developed here?
I do see that changing because of our efforts, actually, very specifically. There are certain resources that we have, certain draws that Grants Pass enjoys that need very little extra lift. The river is one of them. And what we don't have in a real thoughtful way yet, though we're working on it, is a way to highlight all of the other things that are happening in Grants Pass. This is just me speaking as a citizen now, as a resident. I think there's never been a more important time to take control of the narrative. There are a lot of folks that have misconceptions, I think, about what Grants Pass actually is, what Grants Pass represents, what Grants Pass has to offer. And so our work, if we're doing it correctly, is to expand their limited vision and understanding of the community and show them, hey, it's not just the river, it's not just Boatneck, it's not just XYZ. We have a lot going on almost every single day in this community that I think a lot of people just are unaware of, including people that live here.
So how much does the overflow, like from Ashland, the theaters down there, the Shakespeare efforts, and the Brit, and you know, going to Crater Lake and some of the surrounding areas, doesn't that draw people here too?
100%. And in fact, our friends at DVA would tell you that we've been establishing Grants Pass as kind of base camp for a lot of those activities. If you're going to go to Crater Lake, come to Grants Pass and stay here. You don't need to stay in Medford or Ashland. We have more to offer.
So what would you say would be the percentage of that draw from surrounding?
I would have to do that research. I couldn't say here.
Do we have other questions? I had one question.
Yes, ma'am.
You spoke about the numbers for 2024, but it got past me. Which numbers? We're working off 2023 numbers for what metrics, and when are the 2024 coming?
This is a
in?
bit of the complication, and I'm happy to provide these numbers as soon as they arrive a little later this month, but you'll get the Dean Runyon report essentially, and we'll condense that down and make sure it's meaningful information. There's a lot to it, but it's also the gold standard of research for this industry, and unfortunately it just comes out later in this month, and that way you'll get the 2024 numbers.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And I guess I have one more question,
Sure.
just maybe an expanded question. When you get together and you decide this is what we're going to cover in Grants Pass, and then you said there's so many things that are happening.
Yeah.
What goes, and then you also said there's some discernment about what is highlighted. Can you just maybe speak a little bit more to that process?
Certainly.
Thank you.
Obviously, or maybe not obviously, maybe I should explain. Our mandate requires that our marketing dollars are spent on drawing tourists 50 miles beyond the county. And so that's where the bulk of our attention is. Other organizations, Main Street we've talked about, they will be more locally focused. That said, in order to draw people from 50 miles away, not every promotion, not every pub crawl, not every dance night, not every live music at the Blur is going to be worth, hey guys from Reading, you should drive here for, this Friday night band. And so those are the kinds of decisions that we make every single day as we're building out new campaigns, new ads, and so on. Did I answer your question? Awesome.
All right, do we have any last questions from council? Well, thank you so much, Dan.
Thank you guys, I appreciate your time.
All right, up next on our agenda is the RADE building disposal, and we have a presentation from Steph.
All right, good morning, or afternoon now. So we're going to talk about a building that the city has had for many years. It's over connected to Baker Park. It's referred to commonly as the RADE building, Rogue Area Drug Enforcement, which thanks to the chief for enlightening me on the, I think we had 2 or 3 people looking at that. I didn't know, but as I know, I've heard it many times. But so I'm just going to kind of give you the highlights of some of the background on the zoning, on some of the existing property characteristics. Really, the goal of today's conversation is just to see where does the council want to go in terms of the disposition of the building, because from a staff perspective, and our executive team has talked about this several times, at this point, we don't see, none of our departments are seeing an immediate need for utilization of this building. It is vacant right now, and it has been disconnected from utilities, and so, you know, we have this asset sitting there, and we wanted to kind of see where the council wants to go with it. So, so that's really the goal today. It does relate to, we think, two of your goals: to encourage economic opportunities and maintain, operate, and expand infrastructure. So in terms of the vicinity, I think you probably are all familiar with it. It's outlined in aqua here. This is the 0.3 acre parcel that the building sits on today, which is you know, right there, accessed off of East Park Street, and has 60 to 70 feet of frontage on Grants Pass Parkway. The zoning of this piece is the same as the rest of Baker Park, or most of Baker Park, and that's R112. There is the southern end of the park that has the R2 zoning. That's kind of the orangey color, and then this more light yellow is the R112. Across Grants Pass Parkway, you have the tourism commercial district. That's that purple one, and then the fire station sits here, kind of kitty corner, and that's zoned R3. So there's kind of a mix there, and of course it is a very high traffic corridor area. Here's the aerial. You can see a little bit better our wastewater treatment plant. I'm sorry, water treatment plant here on the north side of the river. You can kind of see the parking lot, the boat launch area here. There's single-family residential here to the west. Pacific Power does have a small substation that is right across the street from the entrance to the park. And then, of course, as I mentioned, the Parkway station is kind of kitty corner there. This just zooms in a little bit better so you can see what the parking and vehicular situation is like there. So here on the bottom of the picture, you can see the entrance to Baker Park. And then just as you come in Baker Park, off to the right, there is a paved driveway, which is the historic driveway that serves the RADE building. There's a couple of parking spaces here, at kind of the terminus of that driveway. And then there's several parking spaces that are immediately west of it. So it's just a single building on the property today with that parking, some mature landscaping that is adjacent to the parkway there. And then, of course, we did just recently put in a Portland Lou, a new restaurant, which sits on a different parcel, but it is fairly close, just right here off the internal sidewalk there. Just a little bit of background about it. So the city acquired the main Baker Park property in 1965. That is known as 760 East Park Street. And then adjacent property, the one we're talking about today, is 780. And that was under private ownership for most of that time until the early 90s. And that building was used as kind of a fire substation. And we have Joe here that could give you any more history on that. It has served kind of a couple of main functions over the years: a fire substation, storage building, and then, as we mentioned, the drug enforcement operations facility. That was the last active operation that closed down about 7 months ago. In terms of the property itself, I won't go into all these details. You have them there in front of you. We can take them at questions if you'd like. But I did want to point out I mentioned the size, so it's 0.33 acres. We'll talk about in a minute that we'll probably need to get a little bit bigger because the setback is really, really close to the property line, so probably need to push that line a little bit over so that it meets the minimum setback. So that 0.3 would likely get just a little bigger. It does meet the minimum lot size of 10,000 in the zone, so it's good there. It also meets the setbacks. There's no minimum density in the R112 zone as there is in the R3 and the R4. In terms of utilities, there's a water meter on the site, lateral going down the driveway, going down towards the main parking lot. There's a fire hydrant that is sitting on that little parking area there. There's a sewer main, so really all the main utilities are available. The structure that is there is, couldn't find exactly for this meeting today, but it's certainly pre-1990. It's in relatively good condition. We did a walkthrough of the property, the building official and I, and there is a bit of a sag on one portion of the roof, on the west side, but there's really no other significant structural concerns with the building that we could see. It's flat property. The slope really doesn't start until you get past the boundary for this lot. As I mentioned, it's got that shared vehicular access. Today there is not a cross-access easement to the property. There hasn't been a need for one, but that would be something that could be created. And then the main issue in terms of if you chose to sell it to a private property owner would probably be shifting that lot line so we can take care of the easement. It runs, so here's a couple of photos. That the property line is between the foundation of this building and the trees, so, and that needs to be a little bit more in order to meet the code. So shifting that property line would be something that we could run through and talk through later. But anyway, here's the building. You've probably seen it if you've been in Baker Park. West elevation, east elevation, the south elevation. This is the entrance, the garage door to the property. The garage is basically this end that you're looking at, and then the opposite end that faces the park is here. That's the north end. A few interior shots. The garage that I just pointed out is here. It's got a fairly high ceiling in there. There is a kitchen. There's a couple of office workspaces. Again, we did not see any evidence of any mold or flooding or anything like that. They're in pretty decent shape in terms of the floors. So here's to the real heart of the matter today. What do we want to do with the building? There's a couple of options here. Listing the property for private residential development is kind of where we landed as staff, but that may be a little misleading because it wouldn't have to just be residential development. It is R112 zoning, but within the R112 zone, there are some other things that you can do, like bed and breakfast. There's the chance to do the R2 rezone. The property I can go to in a minute is adjacent. There is R2 zoning is adjacent, so it's not actually spot zoning as it says if we just extended it over. So that could be a potential without becoming spot zoning. Another option would be to demolish it, return it to open space, and just kind of leave that there. A couple of options with the open space. We don't have funding today to improve it to lawn or irrigation. That could be put into a future budget, but it could also just be held for some future municipal use. Another option would be to demolish and then put a parking lot on. Here's a couple other thoughts on that in terms of the options. So if you went with the residential development, the R112, the middle housing code does allow for R112 to be used for middle housing products, so you wouldn't need a rezone in order to do something like that. duplex, triplex townhomes would all be permitted without changing any zoning. Of course, a future owner could demolish it. They could put up a new structure with up to 2 separate dwelling units, so that would be three different dwelling units on it, or construct an actual new middle housing type. The note at the bottom has to do with, partitioning. Sometimes developers look at, well, can I get more lots out of this? The middle housing land division would be an option. It's not large enough to just do a split today with the R112, but you could do the middle housing land division. That would give somebody the option to create up to 4 separate sellable lots, even though today there's only 1. I mentioned the multi-dwelling, so 0.33 acres, it's not a huge site, but it's large enough that you probably could do, meeting the setbacks, meeting the parking, meeting the landscaping, certainly more than the 4 units that you can do under the R112. So if you went that route, or we don't go that route as a city, we just leave that up to a future property owner, that would be an option. In terms of the demolition, so Parks doesn't have any foreseeable need for the building as it sits today. We've thought about multiple options, and when you look at the cost of maintenance, you look at the cost of utilities, and the fact that we are currently able to really meet most of our storage and yard needs, we don't see that. Open space could become that grass area in the short term, or you could look at other recreational uses, public art, and then, as I mentioned, the municipal building. Riverside Park does host events throughout the year that sometimes the off-street parking does get a little bit congested, so that may be a benefit for the city if we held on to the property and chose at some point in the future to do a parking lot. So here's a few cost implications thinking about the options that we just talked about. If we went with the private residential development option, there would need to be probably some money spent to get it ready. $6,000 to $8,000 for that property line adjustment that I talked about. The property appraisal is usually just a best practice for us to do. It's not required. But that would probably be in that $5,000 to $7,000 range, and then some miscellaneous transaction fees if we sell it. The demolition puts you fairly close. If you add up all those private residential options, you're kind of in that similar range. 25 to 30 for a building demolition. There is a basement underneath that building, so that would have to get some fill to bring that up to grade. The budget resources that we have, this would be similar to what we're doing with some of our other surplus property right now. The Starlight and the Beacon Hill and the Allenwood properties, we do have those surplus property sales, and that's at LB 6388 is an account that's been set up for a few years to kind of handle these. That has, as of last week, about $874,000 in there. If you were to sell it, that's completely up to you, of course. Proceeds from the sale could be allocated at your discretion. There were not system development charges that were used to purchase the property, so we don't have that obligation to return those SDCs to the park SDC fund. Call to actions at council's discretion. So alternatives, you could direct us to pursue one of those options that I had on slide 14. You could select a completely new option, put this on a future workshop agenda if you need some other things as far as your deliberation, if that comes out of that. Take no action, of course, is always an option. Right now, as I mentioned, we have disconnected it from all utilities. The irrigation system is currently using that, but the power source on the building, but we're shifting that over to a battery, so we won't need that in the near future.
All right, I saw Kathleen and then Rick.
Yeah, thank you. That's nice to know that we have another property that can be done something with. So all I hear is location for building. So what is the value of that location with Baker Park there for swimming and just as far as where it is in the city? Is that a prime location? Would that be a huge sale if it was sold?
Yeah, well, you know, I'm not a realtor, so they would be able to give you a better answer. The real market value of just this .33 that we're talking about is about $166,000 according to assessor records. You know, that's where an appraisal would be helpful.
Yeah.
To
Yeah.
kind of look at comps. You know, that Wade may know better than I about what the average trips per day on the Parkway is. I don't know. I mean, it's well over 25,000, 20,000-ish a day. So in terms of visibility, you know, you're getting there. That's when we looked at commercial zoning. You know, we didn't include that in there as a staff recommendation, mainly because that would actually be a spot zone situation because there's no other commercial zoning really right there. As well as the impact on the park. You know, we do want to kind of think about how we best protect Baker Park for the public use and make sure that it's something that's pretty compatible as people, you know, use the boat launch and use it for other purposes. So, but certainly a high visibility site
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Brad. Can you go to slide 3? It's the one with the zoning. There we go. So to the left for us is R2, and you said there's a potential of that piece of property becoming R2 as well with the zone change.
Yeah, I think, you know, you could take that R2 zoning and just kind of bump it out over here and
Okay.
extend it a little bit.
What would be the opportunity, because to the right there is R3, would that be an advantage to have it R3 instead of R2?
Oh, on the south side of the Parkway?
Yes.
Well, again, you know, that would be really what's the highest and best use, and that's kind of what we're here to talk about today. The R3 doesn't get you really any more density because the site is so small that the R2 density allows you to maximize it, so it wouldn't get you any more units if you're talking about strictly from a residential. The R3 zone does have more non-residential uses though. You know, there's some office uses, there's some other things that are in the R3, so that.
Okay, and last question, you talked about doing lot line adjustment. Is there the opportunity for a lot line adjustment that would take that northeast corner of the R2 and just extend that line completely to the east and enlarge that property?
To the east.
Yeah,
So
towards the Parkway.
he's asking if we could make the line of the R2 straight across, and so you'd be extending the property north. Yeah, right there, Brad.
And go all the way to the Parkway and then have that as one piece for sale? Or is there something on that eastern, right along the Parkway that we would need to retain that?
There's no use there today. It's just, you know, it's just landscaping. You're talking about this kind of this point here that is
Correct.
adjacent, yeah.
In that little section just above it, if, like, take the
Right.
zoning line,
Yeah.
correct, just as you're drawing it there,
Yeah,
we would have that option.
we would. We do own this property.
Okay.
The city
So-
does have that, as well as the RTC across, you know, the street. So this is the Texas property.
So theoretically, it may almost be short of doubling the size of the current site. And would that increase the prospect of selling it and the opportunity?
Well, we'd have to take a little closer look to see exactly, you know, what's utilities and talk with ODOT. I think their right-of-way is probably maxed. I mean, I don't think they're going to probably need to acquire any more right-of-way, but we could certainly look into that.
Okay, thank you.
Eric? Okay, Indra?
You mentioned overflow parking for Riverside, but when people used to actually use Baker Park, was there ever a parking issue there? Like, did it ever really get full? Did we not have enough spaces for Baker Park?
I'd have to ask Josh or Chad to know for sure, but I think it's very, very rare that there has really been, sometimes you get boat trailers that are parked there, and those occupy some spaces. And so while people are out fishing or boating, during that period, there may be some, it may get kind of full, where it would be tough to find parking. But I think certainly in the off-season, we really don't see much of a congestion issue.
I guess my question is for the city and maybe the chief, as far as why we vacated that building. Is it just no longer necessary? I know we have this building and it's readily available. I guess just before we go away with it or sell it or decide whatever we decide with it, I just want to make sure that that is actually the course that the police department and the fire department want, that they don't actually need it anymore.
Yeah, it's a great question. Thanks for asking it. The team has not gone anywhere. It is still a robust team, and they just have relocated, and we don't need the site anymore.
Thank you. The other question, or the other statement, I guess, would be then, in my mind, I think it'd be good to let the free market take basically sell it if that's what the city needs. So just my thoughts.
Rob?
So if that were sold, those funds go back into LB 6388, or they would go into 6388, I should say?
Yeah, I mean, JC could give more, but that would be where, to date, our surplus proceeds have been going.
So could you review again what the restrictions on uses of that fund are?
Well, the fund was, set up just a few years ago,
Right.
when the council began considering, surplus property sales, and we set it up for housing,
Right.
as a resource for housing.
And there's restrictions on the use of that right now, the way it's,
You did adopt a resolution
Right.
to set guidelines and parameters for that.
so was that was the fund that we just used, I think at the last meeting, to fund Ramsey and Nebraska, the SDC waiver, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so then that dollar amount, the 874, that was the amount that was before we gave away about half of it. So I don't know if that figure is accurate anymore. It should be about half that, if I'm not mistaken.
Can you help me out, JC, on that? I don't know if you
I can look it up.
took the withdrawal
But
on that.
you guys remember that, it was last meeting, right?
Yeah, I just don't know from the finance side if the timing of them showing the withdrawal hit.
So the way the fund is now, it's supposed to be dedicated to SDCs or I should say, low-income or medium-income housing. Is that not correct?
Low-income housing, affordable housing,
Affordable housing.
SDC incentives, that's what it's
Thank
set
you.
up for. So that's done by resolution.
Right.
If you wanted to free that up, then you can do so by changing the resolution.
Thank you.
You have an answer to your question. So we have not done the drawdown for the Nebraska property yet, but there's 875-ish thousand in there before that drawdown.
When you say we haven't done the drawdown, we voted on giving half of it away last meeting, did we not?
Correct. It just
Okay.
financially hasn't hit the project yet.
Okay, but in reality then, it's about half that.
That is correct.
Thank you.
Do we have other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you, Bradley. And so now let's open this up to discussion. Are there any discussion items from council? Kathleen and then Rick.
Well, just considering that we want to increase our tax base, I would be in favor of selling this if we had no use for it in the city. Yeah, I think strategically for housing would be great. It butts up against another residential. And I think it could be a prime location with the swimming access there, and the boating could possibly go for maybe higher price. I don't know, but I'd be in favor of selling it.
I also support the comments that Kathleen made, and I'd also like to entertain the idea of taking that line at the northeast corner of the R2 zone, extending it completely to the east to the parkway, and doing a lot line adjustment for the entire piece of property, enlarging it, providing it's not necessary or needed to be retained for any purpose for the city, and just enhancing the value of the property as well. Thank you.
And Seth?
Yeah, I agree with all that. Does it make sense to look into R2 as well?
Correct, R2.
Okay.
Rob?
Yeah, I agree with Rick's suggestion. Otherwise, that property to the east it appeared to be, or that sliver, I should say, appeared to be so small that it's going to be of really little value to almost anyone, and yet it could really enhance the value of this property if it was added to it. So I think selling it as a slightly larger piece that could really be valuable to a developer, I think would probably be the smart move.
Kathleen?
So I guess it's a question, but I'll try not to ask it as a question. Could that be a wide range of housing, middle housing, workforce housing, and low-income housing? I would be in favor of middle housing.
So to respond to that, ultimately, if you put a restriction or something along those lines, it would drastically affect the sale of the property and reduce that value of the property. So the recommendation would be that if you were to do this, we could make the modifications to enlarge the property, take care of the easement issues and the setback issues, get it rezoned to R2 and put it on the open market for a private entity to purchase and develop it according to R2 zoning.
Rick?
I agree with Aaron's statement. I would like to see the flexibility of the property being open to any development, residential and other, as I think that would enhance the community as well. Thank you.
Indra?
I'm on board with that suggestion, making the property larger, and then let the market decide who purchases it.
Any more items for discussion? So we're looking now then to give some direction to staff. Is there anyone who would like to make that proposal? Rick?
I'd like to make the proposal that the property have a lot line adjustment after reviewing any restrictions on that piece of property in the parkway, and to put it on the market and consider the opportunity for an R2 zone change. Thank you.
Eric? Oh, and we have a second. So without any other discussion items, let's, by a show of thumbs, does that sound good to council? Okay, I think it's unanimous. And does staff have good direction?
We do. What we're going to bring forward to you in the future business meeting are a number of actions associated with direction from today's workshop, which would include a zone change to R2, the extension of changing the property lines and taking care of those issues before it is ultimately marketed on the open market.
Ready for item 3?
Oh, yes, item 3 on our agenda is from our city attorney, resting in public spaces. Thank you, Stephanie.
Good afternoon, council. This is part 3 essentially of what we had talked about previously, trying to get in place before seeking to have the preliminary injunction lifted. As you'll recall, it was to bring forward the new sites, which we have done, make sure that they're ADA compliant, which is what you directed. But part 3 was to look at some revision to the Grants Pass Municipal Code in order to clarify and address some of the judge's concerns. So hopefully that's what I brought here for you today. This is also on the agenda for Wednesday evening if you choose to move forward to that so that we can continue on as short of a timeline as possible and address all the concerns. So with that, so there's 2 pieces to discuss as part of this. The first is the ordinance revisions. They would declare an emergency, consolidate the restrictions on camping in city parks from chapter 5.61 into 6.46. And that's mostly for clarity. If you looked at the code before, there were basically 2 different components of the code that addressed what you could and could not do in the parks. This would consolidate it into one spot, so you're only looking in one area to find out what the restrictions are. Chapter 5.61 would continue to prohibit the sleeping on sidewalks, streets, alleys, or in doorways as was originally written. It's just 5.61 would only include that portion going forward. There would also need to be a resolution to identify authorized resting sites in accordance with the new code provisions, just to clean up the language. It would be the exact same resolution that you approved before for the existing sites, just with the appropriate language involved. This supports council's goals of leadership. We're going to amend and consolidate in order to meet what we need to do for state law. So the background, just so we can remember why we're here, goes all the way back to ORS 195530, which means that we have to have reasonable time, place, and manner restrictions if we're going to regulate sitting, lying, sleeping, or keeping warm. In August of 2024, the council did establish an ordinance that provided such restrictions, and then subsequently established camping sites at 7th Street and J Street. This council on January 7th closed J Street, and that then triggered Disability Rights Oregon's lawsuit seeking injunctive and declaratory relief. And then in March, the court did grant the preliminary injunction, which is what brings us to today. So this April 16th, we just did establish those 150 sites with ADA compliance. We just need to finish cleaning things up. So with that, the overview of the ordinance revisions, it would be to clarify and to incorporate 561 into 646 and provide some new language based on experiences we've had since the original ordinance. And I'm going to walk through the proposed changes one at a time today, and you can feel free to interrupt and ask questions as we go, because I think it'll make a little bit more sense to do it that way. So with that, that's 646. And I know the red lines look a little messy, so I think it's important to walk through individually. And I need this one. All right, so 561, almost the entirety of chapter 5.61, it would be going away. It would be, the only language that would remain is this language here that prohibits sleeping on public sidewalks, streets, or alleyways because it's a public safety risk, as well as sleeping in a pedestrian or vehicular entrance to public or private property that abuts a public sidewalk. So all of that language stays the same. Everything else would be removed from this ordinance. Not all of that language is going away, though. Some of it is basically copied and pasted into 6.46, and that's where some of the complications here come in. Going back, so in 5.61, we would be getting rid of the definitions relating to camping and city property. So the A, B, C, and D. We're changing the terminology that we're using. Remember, we're going to resting sites as opposed to campsites. We're consolidating some of the things. The judge did express some concern about circular language between the campsite, and camping materials. So that's one of the things we wanted to make sure we clarified with the language going forward. We would keep the definitions of personal property and relocate. We're just moving those into 6.46. On 5.61030, the camping regulated, the prohibition against, quote, camping is still there in 6.46. The language has just changed, and we'll go over what that is. So we're not getting rid of the requirements, and we're continuing that council or city manager can have approval in order to do that in parks other than authorized resting sites. 5.61 is, the text is verbatim moved to 6.46, and so is the language in 5.61060. Those are copied and pasted, and so is 5.61070. So we'll move on to looking at how that plays out. So this would be what the new 6.46 looks like. Close that. There's not really any substantive changes to the definition of parks. Really, it just changes the camping locations language and reference to 5.61 to the authorized resting site language. And then we add in a definition of authorized resting site. And this is new language, this definition, but it's based on that 5.61030, which was the prohibition against camping without council resolution or city manager declaration. So it basically says that council or the city manager can specifically identify what an authorized resting site is. In general, that's going to be the council, except in emergency situations. The new piece of this is that any authorization has to include a finite length of stay restriction. So you can't just say this is an authorized resting site. It would be this is an authorized resting site where you can stay for 96 hours. So you want to make sure you include that piece because that's going to trigger your relocation provisions. The definition of personal property was copied and pasted from 5.61. We did add at the end a new provision that makes sure that it's clear that portable structures are a form of personal property. So not really anything new, just a clarification on that. The definition of portable structure was moved from elsewhere in 6.46. So there used to be portable structures and buffers from locations. That was all one, and further down in the ordinance, we moved the definition of portable structure up to the top so that we could address portable structures earlier in the ordinance. Also, it makes more sense to have a definitions section as opposed to having definitions scattered throughout. But there's no change to the language that was already in the ordinance for that. And then relocate, it looks like there's a whole bunch of changes to relocate. There's not, it's really just changing the terminology, updating that. So the content itself is still the same. There are no proposed changes to .030, but down in 6.46.040, the utilization of open city park space, that's where you see probably the most substantive changes. It used to be that this is where you defined what an authorized camping location was, the spatial requirements, things like that. What we moved to, and just so we're clear, all of this language has been run past the other legal counsel as well. They've reviewed this We've had multiple conversations as well. But it starts off with a blanket, you cannot live, sleep, or leave personal property in a park overnight, period, except in authorized resting sites. So you're welcome to use our authorized resting sites pursuant to the ordinance, but other parks you cannot, and that's the overnight limitation. This would take away some of that confusion that the judge talked about with camping and what constitutes putting all your personal property that looks like you're going to be there for 24 hours. This basically says that if you're there at 4 a.m. and you've been there all night, you've been there overnight and you need to move your belongings. The provisions regarding spatial footprint, et cetera, are moved to further on down in the ordinance. And in fact, created a new section, 6.46.041. This is the authorized resting site restrictions. So it takes all of the provisions that provide regulation of that and sticks them in one spot. The green language, again, came from 5.61, and it says that you're limited to that spatial footprint, or this was 6.46 up above. You're limited to that spatial footprint of 8 by 8. It does add language that says you can't have more than one spatial footprint. So you can't create your own mini tent city within the resting site. You only get one 8 by 8 space. And then there has to be a buffer of at least 3 feet between each spatial footprint. This is a change from having 6 feet in between, and that was based on experience. We've found that it's not as big we don't need to have quite as much space between those spaces, and so we feel comfortable that we can still respond to what we need to with that 3-foot space. Item C is new language, and this prohibits hanging, draping, suspending, or attaching to city property, barriers, sanitation facilities, vegetation, things like that. So you can't hang your dirty laundry on the fences. You can't do those things, partly because it's sanitation, public safety. If the wind catches a shirt and blows it out onto a windshield, we've got a car crash. So we just want to make sure that things are appropriately attached and that it's done to an individual's own belongings. So if you put up a structure and you want to hang your things on your own structure, go right ahead. You just can't do it on city property. And then the length of stay restrictions, we've got those, and then upon your length of stay period, you have to relocate, and we've got that definition of relocate. Again, a lot of this is just kind of revising and making sure it's clear. It's not really, there's very little new language involved. And then we have 6.46.042, which is the buffer from park amenities for portable structures. Most of this is exactly the same as existing language. 2 changes. One, we put in that you can, in fact, erect a portable structure within the buffers if you have approval. That was missing before. So if there's a reason why you think you should, you can seek to get that approval. And then a change we made was except to protect spectators or athletes during an athletic event. And on that one, that was actually my language, mostly because I'm remembering back to some of those blazing hot summer softball games where if you can't have an awning to protect athletes or spectators, it's a pretty brutal thing. So it would be nice if we could protect our athletes and spectators. But again, it would be during the event itself, not overnight and not just for any reason. Moving down to paragraph B here, we did add in that the 7th Street Bridge, so you can't have portable structures under Caveman Bridge or the 7th Street Bridge. I believe that was just an oversight initially when this was developed. And then an exception again without approval of the city manager or their designee. So there may be reasons to have an exception. It's always nice to be able to accommodate those. 6.46043 relates to the removal, disposition, and release of personal property from parks. Almost all of this language, as well as in 044, comes straight from Chapter 561. Again, that's all that green language. We do have included in here that individuals or personal property found overnight in a park other than an authorized resting site shall be removed immediately. So that means that We're providing a place where you can have your personal belongings for longer than overnight. Use those. It's a time, place, and manner restriction. It's a place, we have a place for it. It doesn't belong in the other parks. And then upon your length of, your expiration of the length of stay period, then we would comply with 195.505 and through 510. We would comply with those notice requirements in the authorized resting site. So after the 96 hours or whatever time period is established, then we comply with notice and in order to relocate those. And there weren't any real changes then to the mitigation and penalties other than updating the references. So with that, questions? I know that's a lot.
I think I saw Kathleen, then Eric, then Rick.
Thank you, Stephanie. So with this park language, does that mean that we can have people move from like Kesterson and Lawn Ridge and all of those into the proper resting sites once this language is, or the ordinances are changed? Is that
Yes.
going to be mandatory? No more parks, no more, even the little ones, even the...
This would be a place restriction. You can have those things, those overnight stays at the authorized resting site, not in other parks.
Okay, great. And then, once this is in place, it's referring to emergency situations. So once the injunction is lifted, does that mean we're not in an emergency situation?
The emergency situations refers to the city manager's authority. So normally you would have council make these determinations, but there may be certain types of emergencies where the city manager is able to make those and then bring them back to council for essentially ratification too. So that, because the city manager can act much faster than
Well, how does the
city council.
emergency situation relate to what we're under right now, what we're going through right now?
Two separate things.
Completely separate.
Yep.
So an emergency, for an example, an emergency thing might be, let's say, this is not the situation and this is not where we would cite something, but just as an easy example, let's say the resting sites were in a flood area and the water rose really quick and they're flooded out. I would have the authority to immediately find another location and then get that ratified by council later. That's what's considered an emergency situation.
Okay. And then I guess my final question is, once this is all in the city ordinances, are the resting sites still temporary?
They are. They're still established by resolution, and with that, actually, I will jump in real quickly to the next slide here. Because if you do adopt these ordinance amendments, you would also need to adopt a new resolution using the same language that we used, same resting sites, et cetera, and I can show you, I think you have it, you received by email a copy of what that resolution would look like as well. So same mechanism for establishing and changing and removing the resting sites, still done by resolution. You just have to use the right language.
Thank you for the presentation. I had a question in terms of illegal drug usage. I saw that there was alcohol on the alcohol usage in the parks. I know it might not be, I think it's relevant in the conversation that we're having here. My thing timed out. Okay, the parks, it says alcohol prohibited in city parks. But I don't see anything in here as far as illegal drug usage being added to it. I know we're modifying some things here, but I mean, maybe there's something we could put in there for future usage to help out. I saw that there was drug paraphernalia in terms of confiscating that. So that's my question.
I can jump on that, and thank you for asking that question. We've worked through this over the years with changes to case law, ballot measure 110, and things of that nature. I quite like the possession of narcotics paraphernalia that was built into the language a few years ago with Augustus when he was here, but then we had the change to ballot measure 110, and for a lack of a better term, all is well again when it comes to that. So I don't have any concerns with that. So I have no concerns with possession of any controlled substance, and I have no concerns with how the code is written with possession of alcohol. We're all over that. And we have what we need.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. So I just wanted some clarification. When I was reading this, and in here you mentioned it about overnight and events and so forth. So if it's a trailer or a canopy and it's there associated with an event, then it can be overnight and it's permitted?
If you have written approval to do that, which would potentially be part of any permitting process if that's going to happen. I know when we were discussing in the X-Team meetings, there didn't seem to be anything that came to mind as far as when that might happen, but the reason why we put the ability to have an exception in there would be so that we could accommodate that. If it's part of an event, you'll be able to have it as long as your permit says you can have those.
So the applicant for the event has to make sure they include that language in there.
Correct.
Okay, last question. Wednesday night, we have the opportunity to approve the ordinance. And if we chose to go forward at that point, and it is, say, first and second reading, is there a 90-day lag period before it's actually in effect?
We do have it declaring a state of emergency, so it should be able to take effect quickly.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so, and that brings then to what your options would be on Wednesday night. You can proceed with the ordinance amendments. You can request minor adjustments. If you want research or additional development of this, we may need to move it off the 7th, but I'm happy to try to do what I can before the 7th or not proceed. So what we're looking for today is to know if there's anything that you want in time for Wednesday or if you need it moved.
Kathleen?
I had another question about the 30-day storage for personal property. Can we remove that?
That would be
from the ordinances?
statute.
Seth?
So it says on the 6.46.041, authorized resting sites, does that beholden us to city approved resting sites moving forward? I don't know, you know what I mean?
I do. I understand what you're meaning, and no, it does not. What it says is if there are places that are designated as authorized resting sites, these are the restrictions that apply to those. It doesn't say you have to have authorized resting sites.
Okay.
Indra?
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. So this seems to be a change in the language to align more with the state on resting sites, is that correct?
Hopefully, and to provide clarification to address some of the things that the court raised in the letter. We wanted to clean it up and make sure that the city's intentions for what this looks like are clear.
Okay, so it's beneficial to do this in a timely manner if we so choose to do this? Is putting it off is not an option, like?
It is an option. I can tell you that Attorney Heisel did say that he wanted something like this. He wanted some clarification in the ordinance before he moved forward with the request to remove the preliminary injunction.
Okay, and just to reiterate, it does not tie us to having resting sites?
No.
We can at any time say we don't have any resting sites, and none of that would have to change?
Correct. It says you can designate authorized resting sites. It doesn't say you have to.
Okay, what about the timeline? The 96 hours, would we, if we decide we want to have resting sites but not that timeline, we would have to redo this ordinance?
No, you would not have to redo the ordinance. You would handle that through your resolution process, where you identify those resting sites. Because you have to, when you identify a resting site, you also have to identify the time limitation on it. So you would do essentially the same thing you've done before. You delineate a portion of a property, provide that they cannot live, sleep, or leave personal property overnight, or that they can in fact live, sleep, or leave personal property within that portion, and set that time limit, which currently is, we've got 96 hours before they have to relocate. So it would look exactly the same as what you've done before, just with a little bit different language.
Okay, thank you.
I had a question about, I seem to remember we had some language that said 72 hours, but the 96 was, so
72, I believe you're referring to the notice period, and that's by statute. It says that at the end of that 96, then you have to put notice out for 72 hours before you can forcibly remove and relocate.
Oh, that's what I meant. It seemed like we had fewer hours knowing that there, and it would end up being a total of 96. Okay, all right, got it. Indra?
So on the sites that we have, and you mentioned 3 feet buffer and 8 feet? Are the sites 8 feet, 6?
Yes, they are 8 by 8, which is what our current ordinance has, and then a buffer of at least 3 feet between each of those 8 by 8 squares.
And are the spaces outlined in those sites?
They're not. Some are smaller, right now some are probably bigger, some encroach into that 3 foot. It's a matter of enforcement on those.
So it's just however they come in and set up, basically?
At the moment, yes.
Okay.
Rob?
Victoria, you might want to ask your last question, because I think you ended up with a erroneous understanding. The last question you just asked about the 96 hours plus the 72. You should ask that again. I don't think that, I think you misinterpreted the response. Right, it's 96 plus 72, correct?
Correct.
So it's not a smaller amount that equals 96 total. Okay, so 96 plus 72.
Yes, I did understand that. Thank you, though, thank you. I had a question about, there are 2 places where a city manager is authorized in emergencies. There were 2 that I saw anyway. And then you, Aaron, you described it could be something like natural disasters. It seemed like that would be the parameters of those kinds of emergencies. Would it be beneficial to add what some of those emergencies would be and the timeline for bringing that back to council?
I don't
And maybe
believe
that's also a discussion for council.
I don't believe so. I think that ties the city manager's hands. It's pretty clear what would constitute an emergency. It's if there is no other way to get a decision made in time to address a situation. I think case law out there and statute handles what is and is not an emergency situation. Whenever possible, it's going to come to council for review.
And then the other question that I had is, could you clarify the authorized sites? I think you were actually right there.
Yep.
The definition for authorized sites, it contains in every reference to that, do we need to add the temporary sites to authorized sites?
I don't believe so, because the way we define parks, so parks has its definition and includes authorized resting sites, which are just something that's been identified by generally council resolution. So council resolution then handles what that temporary nature is. Council can issue a new resolution at any time, adding, removing, modifying, and so it's based on the resolution nature that makes it temporary.
Do we have other questions? All right, thank you, Stephanie. And so now we'll open it up to discussion with the council. Rob?
I'm fine moving forward with what Stephanie presented today.
Rick?
I'm also fine with moving forward. Thank you.
And so it looks like there are no other discussion. So it seems like we kind of have do we want to have someone offer direction to staff?
Currently, right now, it's in the packet as a council action item, so we can, and it is in your packet, so technically don't need any additional direction, but we're looking for if council wanted to pull it, or if council had specific questions with regards to the information that we could get to you above and beyond today, so you can make an informed decision Wednesday night.
Rob?
So just to remind everybody, so if you're not planning on voting yes on this Wednesday night, which would be the fastest way to get the unhoused out of the parks, we should probably try to voice that as soon as possible so Stephanie can work on any changes that might be needed. So the sooner the better.
Eric?
Yes, I'm good.
All right, the council all good with the language that is in the changes? Maybe a thumbs up? I think that was unanimous, so I think we're ready to move forward with this Wednesday night. And next up on our agenda, last item on our agenda is agenda review. So open it up to council for any items. And Kathleen?
So I'm a little bit confused about when these resting sites are being opened. Can anybody clarify that, please?
Yeah, the new one across the street should be open later today. They're just finishing up a couple things.
Indra?
I have a question. I don't have all the papers today, but the ordinance seems well done, but so the resolution part designating those specific 4 resting sites, is that part of the, that's a resolution? I don't see that on there. Are we talking about going forward with that as well on Wednesday?
Yes, that is part of the, there should be a resolution also in here for that.
I added it late after the packet was already printed, but it's at the very back of your packet.
Right, it's in the I knew I saw it, but I don't see it here. Okay, so I would just like to voice, the ordinance seems fine with the language. I think it's great to toughen up the language and have some enforcement of rules and what we will allow or not allow. I am not in favor of those specific resting sites in the resolution. I think it hammers the northwest part of town, specifically this area around A Street. I think it's going to be a disaster when we have all those people in one spot. I see police cars and fire here a lot, and I think the chief would attest to that. So I just want to say I'm not in favor of that resolution.
Other agenda items? Okay, Seth?
This is separate from what we're talking about now, but I want to try to become the liaison for the Visit Grants Pass Board. I think I maybe mentioned that, so I don't, Visit Grants Pass? I don't know what the steps are for that.
Who currently is the liaison for Visit Grant, for the? Oh, they have a spot on there. Oh, okay. So it sounds like there's an open spot right now for Visit Grants Pass. They would like to have a city representative on there, and it sounds like what Seth is asking for is if council would be okay with us bringing forward authorization for him to be the liaison for that.
I see Rick said yes, and I would be a third council person. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Indra and then Kathleen.
I would just want to make sure, because Main Street is heavily tied in with Visit to Grants Pass, I just want to make sure it's not, there's no conflict there for you if somebody else wanted to do it too.
Kathleen and then Rob.
Yeah, I have the same concern that Indra has on that, especially when there is advocating for funding going back and forth between those two groups. I just wonder if there's an inherent conflict for Seth to take that position.
I don't see any legal conflict, but if council sees a desire to have different people representing similar sectors, that is also totally appropriate if the council wants to do that. So it'd be your call on whether or not you'd want to have Seth as the liaison or open it up to the floor for others.
Kathleen?
So what does that entail? Some kind of vote? Or, I mean, I don't have a problem with it. I think he should be able to be on a committee that he wants to be on.
Well, it seemed to me like there were 3 counselors who thought that that was okay and 2 possibly voiced concern. So I was going to see, if we wanted to take a vote on that, or. Go ahead, Seth.
Yeah, no, I totally get the concerns. I'm not coming from it from the financial aspect of, funding from the city. It's more just to support them. I've already been supporting them for years. Get information back, yes, to council. And yeah, Main Street does work close with them. But other than just trying to, help the community, that's kind of all we're trying to do, I guess. So financially, it's not, in that sense, as council. If that makes sense, I don't know.
Kathleen?
It seemed to me that in the packet, there was some talk about meeting, like the Wednesday night meetings and the times and the workshop meetings and times.
Oh, I'm sorry, Kathleen, maybe we should finish up the last question and then go on to that.
Yeah,
And
yeah, sure.
I'll make sure to hold your place.
Yeah,
Okay.
sure.
So it seems like, do we want to put this on an agenda, the naming of the person, or do we want to take a vote now? Looking for some direction from council with regards to putting someone on the Visit Grants Pass. Indra?
I think and nothing bad. I think you would do a fantastic job, Seth. I just think if there's someone else in council that would like to be the liaison, I would prefer that because, I think there is a little bit of you guys work together and there are financial things at stake. And so I think it would, to me, feel better to have someone else. But if no one else wants to do it, then I'm sure that would be fine.
They're both separate nonprofits, so I'm just curious if that has anything to do with being a council liaison.
No.
Shall we take a roll call vote and see if we want to continue with appointing Seth to the Visit Grants Pass, being the Visit Grants Pass liaison? We'll just start with a yes, no from Rick.
Yes.
Oh,
Ye-
Rob?
Yes.
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 I think so.
Yes.
And yes. Yes, Kathleen.
Okay, where was I? I guess I was talking about the Wednesday night schedule and the workshop schedules. Now, why is that in our packet? Are we talking about change, if we want to bring that up to change, now is the time? Is that what's going on, or?
So the meeting times is in a resolution, and we've been practicing it differently than what's in our resolution. And so we just are modifying it, just catching it up, because we used to meet every Monday for workshops. We don't do that anymore. So it's just updating to our current practice.
No, there's no changes based on your current group norms that you've established. We're just catching the code up that to what we're currently practicing.
So if this was, would this be an appropriate time if there was to be a change in times for the workshop or any of that? Would this be an appropriate time to bring it up again?
Well, you can definitely bring that up at any time. I know we had a discussion about changing the times before. We did a doodle poll, we came back, and I think it was the decision by council to keep it the way it is. If there's another time or date issue with the meetings and you want to bring it up, you can do that at any time, and we can have another discussion or another doodle poll based on whatever your intent is.
Indra?
Are we just talking of miscellaneous items now?
Agenda review.
Okay. Oh, well, I would like to mention, because it recently came to my attention, and I was unaware that the agenda setting meetings were changed to once a month instead of twice a month. And I believe that was made strictly at the behest of Mayor Scherf. And I just want to express, I haven't had one agenda setting meeting yet. To me, that's a time for council members, and I don't know if everyone would agree, to feel part of the process and kind of get an idea better of what goes on at that means and what's going on with the city. So one, I was surprised that he could just do that himself, and maybe that's fine. But two, that there was no communication with the council or even asking us if that was okay or what we thought about it. So I was very disappointed with that process.
Yeah, I can just briefly, if you want to have further discussion, I'd recommend have the discussion when the mayor is here, but the way our policies are established right now is the mayor does have the authority to draft the agenda for council review and do so in a manner that works for him and staff, and also the council president is associated with those meetings. So at the time, the mayor set those meetings up for once a month, I think due to a number of potential reasons. So that's something that you could bring up, and at this point, I'd say I would first start with sending your concern or your question to the mayor to see if there wants to be a follow-up discussion about that. But the agenda setting meetings have always been established as the mayor's agenda setting meeting to set an agenda for council's consideration.
I will add one thing. I can't remember all of the reasons, but I know that Mayor changed that. I am open to council revisiting that if they want to, but I remember one of the reasons that he said he was wanting to do that was because you have the agenda review during every meeting as well, and that's a time for council to discuss. So that was one of the reasons, and I think there may have been a couple of others, but I don't remember off the top of my head. Indra.
So it sounds like you were informed of that, but I don't know, maybe I'm the only member that wasn't aware of that. And it might be fine. I mean, if everyone is agreeable to that, that might be fine. But I think, does anyone else have concerns about that? I guess I would ask. If no one else does, then I'll let it drop. But maybe I'm the only one. I don't know.
Rob?
Yeah, I also was surprised that Clint just, I guess, unilaterally changed that certainly without consulting or informing me. But yeah, I just have to wonder if that makes the lead time for anything that could possibly be on the agenda at least 2 weeks longer. In other words, there could be something that we might discuss at one workshop that would be, could be even a month and a half out if he's only gonna set the agendas a month ahead. So I just don't know that it keeps our subjects as timely as they could be. And I'd be curious to know, I'd like to hear it from him. I would have liked to have heard it from him before he did it, but it's certainly the second best time to hear it from him would be after he's done it. So I'd like to hear what his explanation was.
Yeah, so it sounds like it may be a discussion that you can have when the mayor's here, and the mayor utilizes the 1 a month meeting as more of the long range. Let's take a look at 2 months out. What are we looking at? During the agenda review or matters for mayor, council, and staff at the Wednesday night meetings, there's an opportunity if council's like, hey, public safety funding, it's scheduled for June 30th, but you know what? We need to talk about that in 3 weeks. That's when you could bring that up and it could be scheduled. It doesn't mean that the agenda is set in stone and can't be moved. If there's an item that is time sensitive that you would like to have in place that's not there, this and or the Wednesday night are two great additional opportunities besides just the once a month that you can make those changes.
And I would say when it happened, I too had the questions that people are bringing up now. So I am open to council discussing that again. Maybe that would be a good thing to bring up Wednesday night. Any other agenda? I had one I would like to add. We have a really important issue ahead of us that had to do with our executive session. And I thought it would be helpful for staff to, for council to separate the two items that are before us. One of the items being the pathways to the Pathways to Stability Stepping Stone Stabilization and Navigation Center. I thought it would be very helpful if we separated that from any land acquisition. And so I wanted to speak for this particular new organization. And I wrote a resolution, and I wanted to I have copies for everyone here, but I didn't know if it would, and I will give you one if you want one. But it would be a resolution that would grant permission and sanction to Pathways to Stability Stepping Stone Stabilization and Navigation Center to establish operations on a city-designated property, but it does not delineate the property. So it would just be for this organization because they have been doing a lot of planning and long-range financial planning and working with other nonprofits. And I wanted to make sure that their work, that they felt like they had a solid commitment from council, so that they didn't, so that they would know that they would be an organization that we are working with, regardless of the land acquisition. So I would like to propose, and I guess it would take 2 other counselors to have this resolution to be looked at, and I would like to propose that it just be looked at this Wednesday. And again, I have it for you. I don't know if it's appropriate to give it out now. I will, and I can. I can send you an electronic copy. I can give you this printed copy. So just any comments about that? Rob?
As I stated in the executive session, I think that moving in that direction is putting the cart before the horse again. It's up to council to decide the size and scope of the services that we may be wanting to contract for. Usually contracts involve an RFP as well. And we need to have an open public forum where the public needs to hear from council what our thoughts are as far as size and scope and location. You know, we, in a certain sense, are fortunate that Judge McLaughlin helped define what objectively reasonable is, and she basically used a number of 150 spots, or 150 people need to be accommodated for, and council needs to decide if that's a direction that we wanted to go for the good of the city, or did we want to potentially do something much larger and more ambitious, which seems to be my understanding of what stepping stones is, although we've had no official council-sanctioned public forum on their plans. But once council has decided the size and scope of what we are looking to contract for, we can make that clear, and then it's possible that Stepping Stones wants to try to fill that. They may not be interested in doing what council decides taxpayer dollars should be spent on. And until council does that, I think that choosing the group, even though I don't even know if they are a nonprofit at this point, and I don't know who their board is, there's so many unanswered questions there, and I see no benefit in moving forward and making commitment, especially when they don't even know yet what council is going to be asking of them. It's cart before the horse for no practical purpose that I can see. Again, I'd like to see an open public forum. I'd like to see a situation where the public, and the reason I say that is when Stepping Stones had their forum at Calvary Church, which was not city sanctioned at all, even though there were city councilors there, there wasn't enough space for quorum reasons for councilors, all councilors to be there to even hear it. We got several emails with questions from people that did attend, and I know from follow-up phone calls that I know at least 4 people who submitted cards with questions on them that were never asked that night. So there's so many unanswered questions about what that program is and what they're proposing. There are probably more unanswered questions than there are answered questions. So to me, I'd like to see an open public forum where the public would get to hand questions in on cards. I also, after it's all discussed with our legal as well, and I'd like to have legal representative answering as many questions as is possible. And then the public have a chance to ask another round of questions based on the answers they hear from the dais. And then at that point, the council may be able to move forward and decide as to, again, size and scope, and then where council might best envision or see a project like this. I think every day that we don't schedule that, I think we're wasting time because we're going to end up there. Even though I know, Victoria, you know, it was your feeling that enough people understood it, that we didn't need to do something like that. I mean, that's what you said the last time we were at a meeting. I feel that 90% of the public doesn't even understand the difference between a low barrier shelter and a no barrier shelter. The most basic questions have to be presented to the public or given them the chance to ask those questions. The most basic definitions need to be given to the public, because right now, all the public really knows, and I'm talking the 80 to 90% of the public that doesn't pay close attention to every detail that's going on in town, all they know is what they've seen at 6th and A. That's what they think a shelter is. We need to make sure that everyone understands what we're talking about. Right now, they do not. And every day we don't plan for that public forum, we're wasting time.
Thank you, Rob. I think this would be a part of, I mean, there would be public comment at that time. So I guess that's why I was wanting to put this into a meeting so that there would be public comment. Indra.
I agree that we need a town hall type meeting. I don't think public comment is enough. I think we really need to engage with the public where they can ask questions and we can answer their questions and have a back and forth, and not just them coming up to speak and then it matters of the council at the end we address some of them. I don't think that's enough. And I agree, and we all receive emails. There are a lot of questions out there that people just don't know. I think it's very premature to select pathways for stability right now and tie it. I asked that at the last meeting, is this tied to the real estate? No. But now we're trying to tie it, or some are trying. Well, you're saying pick them, correct? Am I wrong? Let's choose them, and then whatever site we pick, they're it. So you are tying it to the real estate. Okay, maybe you can address that. I'll just finish up that when you say we have been working very hard, I would like to know exactly who we is. Are they meeting with Aaron in the office at the city? Is it you? Is it Clint? Who is we? Because I have not been meeting with them and working very hard, and I don't know if Rick has, or Rob, Kathleen, Eric, Seth?
It would be city council that I was referring to.
City council has not been meeting with them, putting together the plan. That's what it makes it sound like. And so that's my concern, is it looks like it's a city sponsored thing, and it's not. I think we have to be very careful about not making it seem that way.
So I think Councilor Pell had a good governance suggestion, and it would be something I think is timely. It is you're working on acquiring a piece of property, but we also need to solidify the type of service you're wanting to provide and at what level. And that has not been discussed yet. And I think Councilor Pell's suggestion of getting public feedback during that process is important before you ultimately make that decision. I'd be more than happy to establish a town hall with an opportunity for specific guest speakers and council to listen and do a learning and listening session like we did before with the injunction when we first had it done at the Supreme Court level. That was extremely successful. And doing something similar for this piece, so council can have more information to make an informed decision on what services you're looking for, and then ultimately that could be the formulation of an RFP or some kind of contract that we would be entering into for a mutual memorandum of understanding or something along those lines on services that would be provided. But if council would like that, give me that direction, we'd be more than happy to schedule that.
I would like to, maybe you could answer Aaron or possibly Rob or Rick. When this was done in the past, when a contract was given to, or a grant was given to Mint. So I guess I would ask, was there a public listening session then? Was it the same process? Because it feels like the same sort of a thing. So did we schedule a public forum for that?
The Mint thing was a little bit different. We had some grant dollars for Mint to do a couple of different services. The services were defined on what they were going to do, and the use of the grants were defined for helping with property procurement and those kind of things. It was driven more from Mint saying, here, this is what we're doing. We're needing some additional funds. This is a little different. This is council needing to make some policy decisions in relation to the current injunction, moving forward with the ORS 195, which is basically House Bill 3115. So it's a little bit different of a situation, but there are those things that's still out there that need to be defined.
I think it's very important that we do this quickly. Time is of the essence, and I don't want the opportunity to keep pushing things forward for another this or that, and we lose a great opportunity. So, because if we do that, our city is losing a lot. So if we were to have this sort of a listening session, it would need to happen quickly, like within the next week. So that people who are working on this can attend, can answer questions. This isn't just one organization either. It's we've all gotten the emails. This is up to 14 different organizations that are working together, and we need to give them direction. Kathleen.
Well, if I remember correctly, when Mint was considered, they did that very thing. They came into council and they answered questions. They gave their proposal, they gave their information here on a Wednesday night. And it was several times. It wasn't just once, so it feels like that could work too.
Rob.
So I think as Aaron was getting at, I mean, Mint was already a working organization with a board. They had already, they had some funding. It was clear that they were already doing some things, and they basically told us they were going to intending to do more, which they did, you know, with or without our money. So stepping stones, if stepping stones were actually doing some of these things already in progress and came to us for a grant, that'd be a little bit different. But they're not. It's a different situation. And again, I knew I felt anyway, I didn't know, I felt in the executive session when I made this suggestion of an open public forum that we didn't decide to move it forward that day. We were wasting time. We could have decided that day to do it. We would have been a week ahead. And some people didn't want to do it that day. They felt that there was already, that the public already had a good enough understanding, and I disagreed with that completely, as you know, Victoria. So, you know, the one change or the one adjustment that I would like to see, Aaron, I thought that when we had the learning and listening session or whatever it was on the status of our lawsuit and all that stuff, I felt that while that was very good and very helpful, especially since it then became a YouTube thing that people could refer to, I also think that it was a little bit truncated. It was a little bit, I think that this particular situation now, especially with the crisis we have with our 6th and A and our 7th Street situation, I think that we have to be prepared for a much longer potential meeting with a lot more questions and answers and a lot more back and forth, because I think there's so much misunderstanding. I won't call it misinformation because that's kind of like intentional, but I would say there's so much misunderstanding out there as to what all the different moving pieces are with this situation, especially, I think, as I understand it, although Council I don't think has ever really discussed it, what really our long-term legal goals are here, because we kind of know what the goal are, but we don't really know, we've never really publicly discussed or even privately discussed what our legal hopes are for potentially setting up a navigation center, shelter, whatever combination of things. So the public needs to, at least, whether they're going to understand it and retain it, whether all of us are going to understand it, retain it, it needs to at least be stated in public one time, and everyone has to have had the chance. And that could be a long meeting, but the longer we put that off, we've missed an opportunity to educate the public as to what our plans are and why we would be doing it.
Okay, thank you, Rob. Seth?
Yeah, I'm all for the forum. I was at the League of Oregon Cities last week and heard a great presentation on House Bill 3115, and so that's something too that I think should be discussed in this forum, because I don't think enough people in the community know about 3115 and what it actually entails. I've seen enough discussion online and just within people that I've run across, whether it's about pathways to stability, whether it's about why can't we do this, why don't you guys do this? So I think there's a lot of unanswered questions, not only just about that or a piece of property, but just, you know, from the state level of why we can't and can do certain things. So I think a public forum serves all of us and the community the best.
Any other discussion about a public forum? Rob?
So whatever the practical minimum length of time is to publicize this well is when I'd like to see the meeting. I'd also like to be able to make sure that all the counselors can attend and it fits in with all of our schedules. That's really, really important, that we need to be consulted first as to when this meeting would be, because it could be adjusted potentially if someone has out-of-town plans or whatever. But I think that however long it takes to publicly to publicize this, and that's, I'm guessing that my feel on that is it's probably about 2 weeks as a minimum, but that's what I'd like to see. My feeling is that 1 week is probably not enough time, and we would also have to choose a time that council is all going to be there. And also our attorneys can be there, extremely critical piece. We need to hear it from the attorney. I'm not disparaging Aaron at all, but I don't want Aaron to have to vocalize what the attorneys have told him, because our attorney can't be here. That puts him in an unfair position as well.
Thank you, Rob. If this is for the public, I think that if all counselors cannot be here, they could watch online if this was for the public. So I would still advocate for a week, week and a half, maybe we can split that time. We need to have it as quickly as possible because there are over a dozen organizations who have been working together who need direction.
I would request at least 2 weeks. The legal ramifications, the topics at hand, the questions that may need to be discussed, the consult with legal attorneys, with our legal counsel, and then the scheduling, making sure the most council can get there, making sure that we've got enough advertising out into the public. I think 2 weeks would be a reasonable time for turnaround for a forum like this.
So 2 weeks exactly is May the 19th, if people could quickly look at their schedules. Indra.
Can we have a chance to actually go look at our schedules and get back to staff? I don't know that we have to do this right now.
Just as a reminder too, we do have a busy next 2 weeks with budget committee meetings and those kind of things. So you got May 13th, May 15th, May 19th, May 20th, May 21st, all in a row. So you got big bank meetings there.
And I would just point out, I mean, it is an important meeting to have, but I mean, I don't want to rush and not have the maximum amount of people there and not have all the counselors there, because I feel like coming out of this meeting, we would have good direction of what we want to do. And so I don't see that we should rush.
It would also require, likely because of the topic and because of the interest in the topic, we would likely be not having it here at this location. It's too small. So we'd also have to try to schedule a time with a venue that would be able to hold a larger group, and that would need to be taken a look at too.
Seth, and then Rob.
I mean, the 19th's fine. The evening is probably the best time for something like. No, that's just a workshop on the 19th. Yeah, the budget's on Tuesday night, so anyways.
So Monday evening on the 9th, Rob, and then proposal for Monday, the 19th in the evening.
Yeah, I think that we absolutely need to try to do this as inclusively as possible, as transparently as possible, giving as many people a chance to be informed as possible. And that ultimately is going to be the fastest way. And we basically could have started on these meetings months ago even, but ultimately at this point, the fastest way is going to be including as many people as possible, and that's going to take a minimum of a few weeks, minimum.
Kathleen.
Yeah, I hear everybody's concerns about getting the word out, but yeah, considering all sides, I would make effort to be here on the 19th. So 19th, I've heard 3 19ths and 4 19ths. If we have, that would be Indra, and then maybe we'll take a roll call vote for the 19th.
Clint's not even here, our mayor, so I think we would want him to weigh in. So I would propose that we let staff take the lead on this with finding a venue, how long it's going to take to put out, not interfering with budget committee meetings, and making sure that all counselors could be here. And I think that is not what's going to happen if we vote right now on one day.
We also, from a staff perspective, thank you, Counselor, making sure if you're wanting, like, say, for instance, Aaron Heisel to attend and those kind of things, we'd have to coordinate with his schedule, whether he can be here in person or online and et cetera. So having some flexibility of the date would be nice also, but if you want to stick to a certain date, we'll do what we can.
Seth.
I'm just spitting out dates here. I would say the 19th, the 22nd, or the 26th. And I think maybe reaching out to like Aaron Heisel and then maybe send out a poll, I guess. Oh, yeah, never mind, 26th is Memorial Day, I'm just kidding.
Rick?
26th is Memorial Day.
27th.
I would say that the 27th would be it's pushing it out too far personally, but we're between the 19th and the 22nd, and I would advocate for the 19th if it cannot be done. If Aaron comes back in a day or two and says we can't do that, the 22nd would be the alternate date. So, okay, so by a thumbs up, does that sound good to everyone? Okay, thank you. Does staff have direction? Thank you. Are there any other agenda items or matters for discussion? So I think that we are adjourned. A motion to adjourn. Kathleen?
Second it.
And we have a second. And so all those in favor to adjourn?
Yes.
All right, thank you.